government class. I'm coming to you live from your classroom where people are trying to listen to their videos. So I'm going to try to be a little quiet and they're not laughing at me. Hopefully they'll learn from their own lesson while I'm recording this. Maybe they'll learn twice as fast today. So we're talking about the powers of the president, official and unofficial. And one of the jobs of the president is to lead Congress. And that is an odd job, seeing that there are two separate branches of government. And typically government does not like to mix the branches. They like to be separate. However, in an attempt to make government work and work together, the president does have a lot of influence over Congress. And that is true more in the modern era than ever before. In early America, Congress was much more powerful than the president, but the president has been gaining more and more power as the years go by. FDR would actually personally tell Congress what to vote on and would have his secretaries write the laws. Now, presidents are not allowed to introduce laws to Congress, but they are able to hand a law to a congressman and say, you introduce this to Congress. That's what FDR did. He controlled Congress with an iron fist, and they just did whatever he told them to. So just about everything that Congress passed during the Great Depression was actually FDR's idea. And that is quite common today. Presidents will have an idea and send it to Congress, and Congress will vote on it. That's why we call the healthcare situation Obamacare and not Congress care. It's why we call the infrastructure bill, Biden's infrastructure bill, not Congress's infrastructure bill. And Congress is the one who votes yes or no on it, but the president probably had a lot of influence in those things, telling, or at least advising Congress what to do. The president often talks to Congress, sometimes quite formally. Every year they do a State of the Union address, and that's right there. And today the State of the Union address is televised and is a major event. It's when the president tells Congress what he thinks the situation is in America, that is the state of the country, and tells them what his plan for the next year is. There's a blurb about that. I've listened to quite a few State of the Union addresses before. Some of them can be quite interesting. Page 255 talks about State of the Union. It says the shortest address in word count was George Washington, just over 1,000 words. And back in Washington's time, they would just write them out and basically mail a letter to Congress. And now it's a huge drawn-out speech. Longest State of the Union address, Bill Clinton in 2000, an hour and a half almost. The first one on radio was Calvin Coolidge in 1923. First one on TV was Harry Truman in 47. The first one in the evening was Lyndon B. Johnson in 65. And the first one live on the internet was George W. Bush in 2002. And typically for the State of the Union address, both the House and the Senate meet together in the House's chambers, and the Supreme Court visits, and a whole bunch of other important political people visit as well to hear what the president has to say about the country. Not only can the president advise Congress on what to vote for, he can also, of course, veto things that he does not want. And about 96% of vetoes historically have been successful. It takes 2/3 of Congress to override a veto, and it is uncommon for either power to have 2/3, or either party to have 2/3 power in the Congress. It's much more common to have something like 55%, not 66%. The president is the head of the government, not exactly officially. Officially, all three branches of government are co-equal, but one branch of government is run by over 500 people, another branch of government is run by 9 people, and the last branch of government is run by 1 person. So when you are looking for one person to represent America, that would be the president. So they are considered the chief of state, the head politician in America. They are the single politician with the most power. Even though Congress as a whole has at least equal power to the president, no single congressperson has that kind of power. So the president is the leader of the nation, and he is the nation's symbol. When other people think American government, they think the president. The president is the one who goes to foreign nations and meets with their leaders. I think it's awesome being able to see Queen Elizabeth through the years with lots of different presidents. This is just a handful of them. of what, JFK, Ford, Reagan, and Obama. But there's pictures of Queen Elizabeth with dozens of U.S. presidents, and that's pretty cool. So he is the symbol of America, both at home and overseas, and often does go overseas to different meetings. Visits the UN sometimes to speak to the UN, goes to like G8 conferences. We'll talk about that in economics. Goes to like NATO conferences in Europe, things like that. He often hosts chiefs of state from foreign countries. What happens when foreign kings and dignitaries come to America? They might visit some congressmen, but really their biggest visit is to the president. And that is their goal, the person they want to see. So I'm sure you've seen pictures of presidents with, Vladimir Putin. There's a picture in your book. Let's see here. There's a picture on page 258 of the Bushes with President Fox and his wife from Mexico, President of Mexico. There's a picture with Putin in there somewhere. Often when foreign dignitaries visit America, they are put up in the best hotels in America, in DC, and they often come to the White House for a very important dinner called a state dinner. It's like a business dinner, but with just politicians. That talks about on page 256 about how the First Lady often puts everything together, chooses calligraphy and the menu and the decorations and the seating arrangements and the flowers, and it's just a really big celebration. Today, presidents wear tuxedos and $5,000, $6,000 suits and things like that. And the ladies wear $1,000 ball gowns. Back in the day, America used to be a little more democratically thinking, where the presidents didn't always want to seem like they were better than everyone else. And Thomas Jefferson wanted everyone to consider him just a normal person. So when foreign kings and queens and barons and earls would visit America, he would open the White House door himself. When they knocked on the door, he would open the door, and he'd be wearing slippers and a bathrobe. And, oh, hi, come on in. Very, very casual. They'd be in tuxedos and he's in a bathrobe. Kind of silly, but he wanted them to think that he's just an ordinary folk. Andrew Jackson would do the same thing. I think it's funny, though, how Abraham Lincoln, who was born in a log cabin and was very outdoorsy, he would always visit people in suit and bow tie and stovepipe hat. Not Jefferson. Sometimes presidents get attacked personally. Sometimes they get assassinated. Sometimes they escape assassination. But America takes that very seriously. Even people who oppose the president, an attack on the president really is an attack on America as a whole. If you ever get a chance to see it, look on YouTube on the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. It's a very interesting video, very tragic. But you can see a Secret Service agent jumping in between the gunman and the president, another Secret Service agent throwing him in the car. And he got wounded and was rushed to the hospital. And as he's being put down for anesthesia to get surgery, he looks up at the doctor, and he's always the joker, even when he's been shot. And Reagan says, "Oh, I hope you all are Republicans." And the doctor said, "Mr. President, today we're all Republicans. So put aside your politics. When the president gets shot, that's personal for all of us." Quite a few presidents have been assassinated, and even more have been attempts on their life. Some of them are serious attempts. Some of them really are not. When President Obama was inaugurated, there was a guy, I think he put on Facebook that he and his buddies were going to grab a lot of guns and try to drive through the inauguration crowd shooting their guns all the way. They got arrested before they were halfway to D.C. So probably not the cleverest assassination attempt there. But when we visit D.C., I would love to see Ford's Theater, where Lincoln was assassinated. Page 257 talks about the Secret Service. The Secret Service was originally meant to protect our nation's money, and they would be infiltrating counterfeiters and deal with them. When Lincoln was assassinated, he had one soldier assigned to him as a bodyguard. This soldier had been kicked out of the military for abandoning his post. He was on guard duty, and he went out to go get drunk instead of guarding. So he was kicked out of the military and sent to protect the president. And when the assassin came to get Lincoln, there was no bodyguard there because his bodyguard went next door to the bar to get drunk. So today we take presidential security a lot more seriously than that. The president is considered the leader of their party, Democrat or Republican, and that is completely unofficial. The president is by far the most recognized member of that party and the single member of the party with the most power. However, each party has their own chairperson that a lot of people don't even know their name. For instance, when you think Democrat, when you think, head Democrat, do you think Joe Biden or do you think Jamie Harrison? This is Jamie Harrison. He is the chairman of the Democratic National Party. I had never heard of him before I Googled who is the leader of the Democratic National Party. Jamie Harrison. Okay, I'm sure he's in the news every once in a while, but probably, page 26, not front page news. When you think Trump, oh, sorry about the picture cutting off his beautiful hair. When you think Republican Party, do you think Trump or do you think Ronna McDaniel? Again, I had no idea who Ronna McDaniel was, although I see she does get some screen time. I had no idea who she was, so I Googled who's the leader of the Republican National Convention. That is Ronna McDaniel. Okay. So those chair people, I'm sure, make a lot of important decisions, but really the president or ex-president probably is way more influential in their party than any other single person. The president can hire or fire thousands upon thousands of people in high political offices. And they sometimes don't pick a person who necessarily is the best person for the job. They pick the person who likes them the most, the most loyal person. So by the time they end up hiring and firing everyone, they end up with a lot of important politicians who like the president, who owe their job to the president, and that builds up party loyalty. One area they do not get to hire and fire in is, of course, congressmen. And quite often there will be congressmen of the same party who just butt heads with the president and don't like his stance on, whatever, or maybe just don't like him personally. And the president can't do much about that. But the president can pick the party chairman sometimes. That's a very important power, I'm sure. The president also goes to various states and federal elections to help him out. So if there is a congressman who is very loyal to you, you might go to his state or her state when they're up for re-election, say, hey, everyone, vote for my best buddy, Congressman so-and-so. And that can be very helpful. If a sitting president tells your constituents to vote for you, that can be very helpful. On occasion, if there is a senator or congressperson who is butting heads with you, you might go to their state and say, don't vote for this guy. I don't like him very much. And then people of your party will have to decide if they want to side with the president or the congressperson. And they often side with the president. And that doesn't happen terribly often. It happened quite a bit with President Trump. He was very controversial, and there are plenty of Republicans who did not like him in Congress. So he actually went to several states and said, don't vote for this guy. A couple times he said, vote for this other Republican. There was once he said, vote for the Democrat and said, I like him better than the Republican. So that's modern politics for you. He also goes to state elections, getting governors in that he likes, and even state legislators sometimes. So they travel across the country trying to get their people in office, and they can be highly effective at that. Restrictions on the presidency. First of all, tenure, that means how long are they allowed to be in office. The Constitution says there's an election every 4 years, and that originally was interpreted to mean every 4 years there's an election, and you can run whenever you feel like running. Unlimited terms in office. So you run for president, you become president for 4 years. 4 years later, you run again, you're president for another 4 years. Then you run again, maybe you're president for another 4 years. And you can still be president until people vote you out and vote for someone else. George Washington decided to step down after 2 terms. He wanted to go home and retire for the second time. He wanted to teach the people how to say goodbye, right? And everyone else followed his lead and chose not to run after that, or at least didn't have the opportunity to run again after 8 years, until we have FDR ran 4 times and won 4 times. And after that, people said that's just way too much power for a single person. No president should be president for 12 years. That's just too long a term in office. So we passed the 22nd Amendment that said you get to be president for 2 terms, which is 8 years, or 10 years max. So maximum, if you are the vice president and you inherit the presidency for 2 years of the last president's term, then you can run for another 4 years, that makes 6, and then another 4 years, that makes 10, and then you're done. Not allowed to run again. Now, if you only win once, you can run it as often as you want. It's not saying you can only run twice, it says you can only win twice. So President Trump's been president for 4 years. He could run again next time. If he chooses to, he can run again the next time whenever he wants. We've only had one president whose term was split. He was president, and then not president, and then president again. That was Grover Cleveland. It's fun. One downside to having a term limit is creating a lame duck situation. The lame duck is when you are president or whatever, you have your office, but your office has a term limit and you won't be in that office for very long. So after you win your second election, you got 4 years left of being president, and you're not allowed to be president again. After that, you're not allowed to run, which means as soon as you get elected, you're not really accountable to the people anymore, because you don't have to worry about your next election. Barring an impeachment, after your second election, you can do whatever you want and no one can stop you. They can either impeach you or deal with it. So sometimes presidents before an election year really want to do what the people want them to do. And then in their lame duck session, they just do whatever they want to do rather than what the people want. And it can cause some difficulties if you have an ornery president, or you have a president who maybe doesn't agree with the people in a lot of areas and might get a lot of laws passed or executive orders passed that the nation might not really appreciate very much. And that's just part of the situation. You either don't have term limits or you do have a lame duck sometimes. That just happens. Speaking of impeachment is bringing charges against a high official like a president or a congressperson or a judge. We've already talked about this. You have to have a majority vote in the House to impeach, and then the Senate has to convict to kick him out. And the only punishment you're allowed to give a president is to kick him out of office. So they're not president anymore. You're not allowed to punish him anymore. That's called executive privilege. You cannot throw a sitting president in jail. What you can do is then impeach him. And once he's impeached, he doesn't have executive privilege anymore. He's an ordinary citizen. Then you can throw him in jail with an ordinary trial through the ordinary courts. That has never happened yet. We have never thrown an ex-president in jail, although we did come close, at least once. 3 presidents have been impeached 4 times: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Trump, and Trump. Richard Nixon came very close to being impeached, and if he did not resign, he would have been impeached. And if he was not pardoned, he probably would have been thrown in jail, and that would have been embarrassing for the country, but there you go. I do not have the remote. Yes. Okay. Andrew Johnson was impeached pretty much on bogus charges. And he was impeached just because people didn't like him very much. Congress didn't like him. And he was acquitted by a single vote. There was one Republican who voted against him. So he is a Republican president, but he's not really in line with all the Republican congressmen. So the Republicans want to kick him out. And there was one Republican who refused to kick him out. And so he was acquitted, and that congressman was shunned by the rest of the Republican Party for a long time. There's a story in your book. Here we go. Edmund G. Ross was a journalist and printer, a Civil War soldier, and a politician. In 1865, when Senator James Lane of Kansas died, the governor appointed Ross to fill the vacancy, and in 1967 he was elected to the office for the term expiring in 1871. During that term, Andrew Johnson's impeachment occurred, When the trial occurred in the Senate, Ross said he could find no grounds for Johnson's removal as president and voted against it. As a result, many viewed Ross as a traitor to the Republican Party. He lost his bid for re-election. Later, he moved his family to New Mexico, and when Grover Cleveland became president, he was appointed governor of that territory. JFK wrote about Ross in his book Profiles in Courage and portrayed him as a hero. Others have disagreed with that. Some have argued that he maybe accepted a bribe to vote against Johnson's removal. Others have noted that his no vote was motivated by his dislike of Benjamin Wade, the Senate's president pro tempore, rather than his like for Andrew Johnson. According to the law at the time, if Andrew Johnson was removed, he did not have a vice president. Remember, because he was the vice president who became president. If he became president, the president pro tem of the Senate, Benjamin Wade, would have become president. So maybe the senator just votes not to convict because he doesn't want his enemy becoming the next president. Anyway, one vote short. Bill Clinton's impeachment was due to lying to courts about a scandal. I'm sure you know all about that. And some people are arguing that if the president cheats on his wife, that is embarrassing to the nation as a whole, and so he is no longer fit to rule, and so we should kick him out. On the other hand, it is not illegal to cheat on your wife. So are you allowed to impeach a president who has not broken the law? On the other hand, he lied and perjured himself. He lied to court about it. On the other hand, should the court have even asked? So, of course, it's not nearly as cut and dry as you might think with just the basic ideas. But, I mean, he did lie under oath. So that's a big deal in my book. On the other hand, other presidents have also cheated on their wives, both in ancient history and in very, very modern history, and they did not get impeached for that. It's a mess. All right. Other powers of the president include passing executive orders. These are presidential directives with the force of law, so they do count as law, even though Congress does not get to vote on it. They do count as law. Here's some famous executive orders. Truman created the National Security Council that helped with our spies and stuff like that. Lyndon Baines Johnson used an executive order to send food to India during a famine. Ronald Reagan ordered NASA to research building a manned base on the moon at the height of the space race. Obviously, that never went anywhere, or it did it. FDR had an executive order sending Japanese Americans to concentration camps. Probably the worst executive order in our nation's history. Followed by one of the better ones, Truman passed an executive order banning segregation in the military. So Truman, as president, did not feel like he could pass an executive order banning segregation nationwide. He felt like that had to be a Congress thing, but he is the commander-in-chief of the military, so he can control the military. And he did that. I was going to say something. Emily interrupted me. Sorry. I don't know. Eisenhower sent the National Guard to protect black students at Little Rock, Arkansas when they desegregated the schools. A bunch of parents and teenagers were going to beat up or kill the black students who showed up, so the National Guard went to protect them. Any other famous executive orders? There was one at the tip of my tongue, Emily. Appointment power, here's a restriction of the president. Whenever the president appoints someone, the Senate does have to confirm it. So the president doesn't get all of the people he wants in office sometimes. Sometimes there's a heavy fight in the Senate, and sometimes the people he appoints are rejected. Coolidge and Taft were very hands-off presidents. They thought the president shouldn't really do much. They thought the Congress was way more important than the president, being more democratic. So they said, we're just going to enforce the laws. We're not going to really lead or forge ahead or do any of our own ideas. We're just going to sit back and let Congress do its ideas and help Congress. On the other hand, Teddy said, I am going to lead and I am going to be the face of the government and I am going to get a lot of my ideas passed. He called the presidency a bully pulpit. And bully does not mean like bully. It means like really good. It's just slang for it's good. Pulpit means, a platform for reaching people. He said, I'm the president and I might not have the official power to pass a law or anything. But if I make a speech and millions of Americans listen to me, I can persuade millions of Americans to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe they'll call their congressman and I will get the law passed. I'm not a congressman. I can't vote in Congress, but I can get millions of people to tell Congress what to do. And most presidents since Teddy Roosevelt have had this idea that, well, yeah, I'm president. People listen to me. I can't force people all the time, but I can give speeches across America and often get my way.